What's up, guys? My name is Iman. I'm a realtor here in Chicago Metroland area. Today, I'm going to go over how to calculate your cash flow on a rental property. So, I'm going to just get right into it. So, how to calculate cash flow is the rent subtracted from operating expenses and financing expenses, and that's how you're going to find your cash flow per month. So, the operating expenses include insurance, property insurance, taxes, maintenance. Maintenance is going to be short term, so things that just happen to break, let's say the toilet, or maybe there's a leak, or just some random thing that a tenant's complaining about. And the capital expenses are going to be more long term, things that have like a longer use life, like siding, HVAC, and roof. So you're gonna want to account for those. And typically, you're gonna do for maintenance 5 to 8%. The difference is going to be how old and what kind of condition the property is in. Same thing with the capital expenses. If you know that the roof is going to be, a bust in a couple of years, you might want to take more than 7%. But basically, this is just here so that you have money set aside and you're not, coming out of pocket when things break. The next is going to be property management. So if you want something a little bit more passive and you want somebody to take care of those kind of issues that come along with having a rental, you're going to want to hire a property manager. They're going to be anywhere between 8 to 12% of the rent. Then it's going to be utilities. So if you have a multi-unit and it has the same meter, it's typically the landlord who will pay for that expense. Usually for single families, the utilities will be paid for by the tenant. But yeah, typically, if they're all run in the same meter, so like the electric is the same for the whole building, typically the landlord will pay for that. Then the miscellaneous expenses, so this is going to be like lawn, snow removal, things like that. Vacancy rate, this is so your property is not going to be occupied for 100% of the time in some years. So when a tenant moves, you have, a time between when the tenant leaves and when you find a new tenant. That's going to be your turnover, and then you want to account for that in your cash flow. And then financing expenses include principal and interest, and obviously get your cash flow. So a question that I get a lot is, so how much should I be looking for in cash flow? And that question, it's going to depend, because it's going to depend on how much money that you have invested into the property. Are you putting 3.5% down on an FHA, or are you putting, 20% down? It's going to vary. It's also going to vary on like how much you actually like the property. Is it in an area that you like? Is it a place that appreciates well? Those factors are going to matter. But overall, you're going to want to keep some money in case, something breaks, or, you have a bad tenant and they're not paying rent, because then you're responsible for the mortgage. So I would say, to give a number, I would say nothing under 300. So we're going to go to an example that I found in Elgin. It was a 4-unit. The list price is at $350. Rent is, they're 2-bed, 1-bath units, and with the condition they're in, I think they would probably rent around 1,200. So 1,200 times the 4 units, that's gonna be 4,800 for the rent. Taxes were 6,670. Insurance was 1,386. I feel like that's a cap, but that's what they said, so I'm just gonna use those numbers. Water is gonna be 3,563 a year. So you're gonna take that number and you're gonna divide it by 12 for the month. And tenants pay everything, so they're gonna pay gas, heat, electricity, but the water is paid by the landlord. So I'm gonna go through both sides. This side is gonna be primary, as if you were doing a house hacking, living in one of the units and then renting it out the other. And then the other is gonna be an investment. So you put 20% down, the more traditional way. So the rent is 3,600. The rent is 4,800 here. The difference is because you're going to be living in one of the units. So the mortgage rate. So this is going to be only principal and interest. This is going to be at 6%, and then on investment is going to be 6.5%, because typically investment properties will have a higher interest rate than a normal primary residence. Insurance. It's 116 here and 150 here because renter's insurance typically is more than primary residence insurance. PMI, because you're putting less than 20% down. PMI stands for private mortgage insurance. And then PMI over here is going to be 0 because you're putting 20% down. Maintenance and capital expenses, they're basically the same on both ends. Taxes the same, they're both 556. So take the taxes divided by 12. That's how I got that. HOA, since it's not in an homeowners association, you don't have to pay any money towards that. So that's 0 on this side. Property management is going to be 0 on this side because you're living in the property. You might as well manage it since you live there. And property management here, I put it as 10%, and that's going to be 480. Utilities, it's actually going to be more on the primary because you're paying your own heat, gas, electricity. So I kept utilities at 250, and then utilities I kept at 175. You know, I think it's like 174 or something, just rounded it up. Other expenses are going to include snow removal, lawn care, 0 since you're going to be managing the property, you're going to be doing it yourself. And then if for an investment, you're putting aside 150 for that. And then the vacancy rate, I just kept it the same at 168. So after you take all the rent minus all the expenses, the operating expenses and the financing expenses, as a primary residence, with you living in there, it would be negative $458 a month. So you're coming out of pocket, paying for the mortgage a little bit. And on the investment side, you're at $605. So is this a good investment? If you're in the investment side of it, you know, you could fix up the units and, you know, maybe charge more for the rent, or maybe, you know, you'll refinance out of that 6.5% when interest rates go down. So there is improvement where you could make in this. And I could say the same as well. You know, you can refinance it, you could fix up the units, maybe ask for a higher rent. So that's definitely possible. But what I tell my clients is, you know, if you like the property, but, you know, the numbers don't make sense for you a little bit, I don't even look at the list price. I put my offer price based on what my numbers are and what numbers I want to get away from that property. So I'll put the offer in. If they accept it, great. You know, got a perfect property that's going to cash flow what I want. If not, just move forward. So I hope you like this example. If you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up on the bio below. And if you guys want actually a spreadsheet on this, I'll put a link in the bio.